The World of Cartooning with Mike Peters is made possible by a grant from the Mead Corporation. Paper, packaging, school supplies, and electronic publishing.
Hi there, I'm Mike Peters, and welcome to the wonderful world of cartooning. Today is probably the highlight of my life. I want you to meet a man that I've admired since I was a kid. He's a giant in the field of cartooning. His career has spanned some 50 years. He's won countless number of awards, including 4 Oscars. Now, you may not recognize his face, but for sure you'll recognize his characters. Bugs Bunny, Pepe Le Pew, the Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote. I'm talking, of course, about the one, the only Chuck Jones. Chuck, this is so fabulous that you could be here. I've got a confession. I have always been a closet animator. I used to do this when I was a kid, and of course I thought I could go blind, you know, if I continued doing animation. And the closest I ever came to leaving editorial cartooning was about a year and a half ago when we were together, and I don't know whether you remember this or not. We were sitting in a restaurant, and you had asked me if I was interested in animation, and I said yes. And you said, well, I'd like to work with you someday. And I went home to that hotel room with my wife, and I said, Marion, I'm leaving the newspaper. I'm going to go to work with Chuck Jones in Hollywood, and it's going to be great. We're going to do characters together. I woke up the next morning and realized that you were probably joking or something. But tell me what I could have gotten into. I mean, what is animation?
Well, my wife is Marion, too, when I went...
No, I mean...
But not the same Marion.
No, it's not the same one.
We were childhood sweethearts, but not with each other. I would have loved to have had you as an animator, but we were just a little out of tune with the times. We weren't quite in sync as far as that part's concerned. But we certainly are in sync as far as my admiration for your work. As far as... And you invoke life in one way, and I have to invoke it in another. Mine is based in movement, and yours is based on how you describe the character by the way you draw him and by the kind of words you put in the mouth and balloons. And so animation can best be described by Webster, who said that animation is to evoke life, and that's about it. I don't believe there's imitations of life. I think, as I'm sure that you feel, that if your characters aren't alive to you, how are they going to be alive to anyone else? Mm-hmm. So what we do is take 24 frames to the second to fill out in order to achieve one second of how a person acts. Mm-hmm. But what we really look for in order to bring somebody to life is to find out not what's right about them, but what's slightly off about them, what's different about them. You know, like Jack Benny used to say, that 3 fingers are funny and 4 fingers aren't. That's what what the psychologists call displacement activities. Huh. So when you're working with Bugs Bunny, there's certain things that he might do which don't have anything to do with his action. He would never say, I'm going that way, which is you're doubling. If you say you're going that way, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Or you say, I'm going upstairs, you don't have to. Peter DeVries used to say that his wife said, I'm going upstairs. I'm going upstairs. She was the one that said that, flying is for the birds. And
That's wonderful. Do you think that you could show us one of your characters? Maybe, could you do a Bugs Bunny?
And I always start with the ears because I used to draw the head, and then I found I didn't have room for the ears, so I had to bend them.
Who is Bugs Bunny?
Well, Bugs Bunny is most of my characters are what I am, mm-hmm. like the Coyote or Daffy Duck or so on. As George Orwell said, I've never met a man that was worse than I am, you know. And so all I have to do is dig down inside the character to find out what he's like. I mean, Daffy is, is self-serving and very willing to do anything to anybody else as long as he gets his way. Well, within all of us, I think there's that factor. We'd like to be avaricious and to protect ourselves. But Daffy will say, when he's betrayed Bugs, he'll say, well, this is a good thing. It's better it happened to him than to me, because pain hurts me, you know. So I told that to my doctor one time. He said, do you want a shot? Do you want the dentist? I said, he said, do you want to use Novocaine or whatever they use? And I said, of course. I said, pain hurts me. And I said, what do they invent the stuff for if you're not going to use it on me?
Chuck,
So,
I heard one time that Bugs Bunny got his name by some roundabout way. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
yeah. What happened was that there was a newspaper, an old newspaper man who worked as a story man at the studio, and his name was Bugs Hardaway.
Mm-hmm.
They used to call people Bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, the newspaper editors were calling things, and there was Bugs Bayer and Bugs, and various kinds of Bugses, and he was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he wanted a drawing of a rabbit, and a man named Charles Thorson was working in the studio, and Bugs Hardaway did not draw very well, so I better write this so you can see what I mean. So after he'd made the drawing of this original rabbit, which didn't look anything like this rabbit,
Yeah.
he wrote, he sent it back, and he said Bugs, and he put the hyphen Bugs Bunny, like that.
Isn't that amazing? So it was a possessive Bugs. It wasn't
Possessive,
just
yeah.
Buggy or
If it had been
something.
for me, it would have been Chuck's Bunny, see? But it happened to be Bugs Bunny, and Tex Avery, who was making a picture at that time called the Wild Hare,
Yeah.
thought that'd make a wonderful name. Tex was really did a picture called The Wild Hare, and that was really the first Bugs Bunny that caught the essence of the matter.
No kidding.
And,
Yeah, I saw that cartoon, and somebody had also explained that that the scene that the bunny was in, and I think it was that movie, well, they had no name for the bunny, or they had no name for the rabbit at that time,
mm-hmm.
and I think it was Elmer Fudd or somebody like that, and he shot this rabbit, and the rabbit laid down, and then Elmer Fudd came over and looked at it, and then it reached up and kissed it,
yeah,
and it said, "This means war," and turned around and then started walking off.
yeah, playing a fight.
Right, playing a fight.
He was playing the carrot.
Classic
Playing the
Bugs
carrot
Bunny.
as though it was a fight, yes.
Well, I mean, that's a classic
Yeah, it
Bugs
is.
Bunny scene.
Yeah, well, Tex was a marvelous person. I was fortunate because I animated with two of the best directors in the business, Friz Freeling and Tex Avery.
Mm-hmm.
And they were incredible people. You know, we depend so much upon the people that are around us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that you don't imitate them, but you gain courage from them.
Sure.
And that's what happened with working with Tex Avery and Friz Freeling, was that I learned something about timing and how to handle scenes and how to do these actions, which are not necessarily straightforward. You'll notice on Saturday morning or something, the only actions are primary actions,
Yeah.
but it's the secondary actions that count.
Now that Fritz Freeling and the Tex Avery, that was all during like the 1940s, right?
1930s.
Okay, 1930s.
That's when I was.
That to me was probably the classic time in cartooning. I mean, that Warner Brothers group was very similar to the old Sid Caesar show, at least in my mind, where they had all the classic comedy writers, Neil Simon and Woody Allen and Mel Brooks and those people. Well, tell me, what was that like?
Well, it was marvelous. Of course, the thing that started the whole matter, this full animation thing, character animation, was the Three Little Pigs,
Mm-hmm.
because that was the first one where a character was defined by the way it moved. You had three pigs that looked alike, but they acted differently. They were different personalities.
No kidding.
And only by the way they moved could you tell the difference. You couldn't look at one, say, aside from caps or something like that.
Sure.
So but they acted differently. And then it went on to the Seven Dwarfs. 6 of the dwarves looked pretty much alike. But there was no question about the difference between them because of their characteristics.
Uh-huh.
I mean, speaking of things like that, you have a displacement activity which is kind of like this. You
Sure.
use that quite a bit.
Sure.
It's a good, strong, doesn't mean anything. I mean, you're not building anything with it. You know, it won't accomplish anything. It may develop muscles, but that's what I mean by this kind of, like me. You know, I'm going like this.
Sure.
Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with it. That's what you look for in a character.
Yeah.
Is what does he do that makes him what he is, you see.
Can you do Porky Pig and show us kind of his character?
I'll get rid of this is Bugs's. Bugs is
I
funny.
know, Bugs is funny.
Well, Porky developed. Porky was just a kind of a little third-string Boy Scout, and was not very interesting to me. And then when I put him in a picture called Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century.
What?
Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century.
Oh, that's a wonderful name.
And that was the one that both Lucas, in fact, Spielberg used that picture in Close Encounters, the Third Kind. When his kids were watching television in the picture, they were watching Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. And Lucas told me that he saw that picture when he was 12 years old. And when he opened Star Wars in San Francisco, he told him they couldn't have the picture. They couldn't have Star Wars in San Francisco unless they ran Duck Dodger in the 24th and a half century with it. So Porky became this kind of a personality, like he is right here, in which he looks at the audience with a certain, as you said, with that half-closed lid, which
See,
indicates.
I can tell. I mean, that half-closed lid is your kind of signature. That's something that I can see. I sit there and watch any of the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner cartoons in the morning, on Saturday morning, and in fact my kids are always come downstairs after me. I'm always down there much before I'm watching it, and I can always tell. I don't even have to read the name that it was one of yours, because you've always got those half-droop lids.
Well, you see, in this case here we have this would be the way Daffy, Porky would be when Daffy had done a gaffe or made something wrong. He would look at the audience like that and go, "Get him."
Couldst thou directest me to Robin Hood's hideout? I would fain join me up with his band of jolly outlaws.
Look no further, good friar, for I am he for whomst thou seekest. I am Robin Hood.
Oh, cut it out. I'm serious. If you don't know where he is, just say so.
But honest and truly, I am Robin Hood.
Sure you are.
Porky, I feel very close to, because Porky stutters. I've stuttered all my life, and I always kind of thought that, well, I can't be that bad, you know. Here you can be a movie star and still stutter. Who thought that up, a stuttering pig?
Well, there's a story about that. Chris Freeling was doing a picture called "I Haven't Got a Hat."
Yeah.
And it was about a bunch of little kids graduating from grammar school. And this little kid was up there trying to recite the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. At the same time, he apparently had to go to the toilet. And so he was running back and forth and getting more and more anxious all the time he was doing it. So the stuttering helped the story. The stuttering as such wouldn't have made much sense, you know, and wouldn't have been proper.
Sure.
But it was necessary for the gag. So he did. So he was saying the midnight. But you see, the point about him is that he actually doesn't stutter as such. He's looking for the right word.
Oh, that's good.
So you know, he's saying. Daffy will ask him, "So you know how to go to Planet X, do you? Well, you should explain it to me sometime, Buster." He says, "Well, it's very simple, sir. All you have to do is follow that planet." See, so he's really working for words, and this is a difference. But so I think that we wouldn't use. I don't think it's funny to stutter as such, but everybody recognizes it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, you know, that's my signature. See, just like your droopy lids, you know, my signature is my study. So, in fact, somebody told me, you know, just be proud of it. Don't be ashamed of it. And I said, all right, or something. Listen, about that signature business.
Pardon me. This is what he'd be saying if he was on Mars. You see.
Oh, that's wonderful.
He'd say, he said, "There's a beautiful Earth out tonight." Right?
That's terrific.
Yeah. So that's all Porky.
Now, for a while, you did some Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Yeah.
And I could tell all those because of the droopy lids. You know, the people who did Tom and Jerry before them never did, you know, any droopy lids. Do you have a favorite character yourself? I mean, do you have something?
Well, not exactly a favorite character. The characters are divided onto two sides. One of the heroes with things I'd like to be, Bugs Bunny, you know, it's being sort of a male Dorothy Parker and or a male Burt Reynolds. How do you like that? And that's a projection.
Yeah.
That's an idealization of what you'd like to be. Or Pepe Le Pew. When I was in school, I was kind of a transparent wimp, and girls not only didn't pay attention to me, they didn't even see me. And that was, So Pepe Le Pew was probably an effort to recover some of those years, because I was 6 feet 1 inches tall and weighed 132 pounds, and it wasn't difficult to see why I was transparent.
Yeah. Now, okay, now, did you have any characters that just did not work?
Oh, many.
Who? Show me. I mean, show me a character.
Characters didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, show me some characters that didn't work.
Well, I can't remember the characters that didn't work because I put them out of my mind. But I can show you any character that... Daffy is a perfect example of what I'm afraid I am. So
Okay, all right.
Daffy is usually sort of angered. Now, he's one of the few that wouldn't have the droopy lips, droopy eyes. Because he's usually mad because he isn't getting his share, you know. He doesn't get his share of the pie. No matter how much of the pie is, he never quite feels, you know. And Duck Rabbit Duck is when he was trying to pretend that it was rabbit season when it was actually duck season. And so that he's usually furious, and he's usually standing in a posture which would be with his own dignity, like putting his hands on his hips.
Now tell me, just between the two of us, what season is it, really?
Don't be so naive, Buster. Why, everybody knows it's really duck season. You're despicable.
The advantage we had, Mike, was that we grew up at a time in the 30s and 40s when animation was so new that you could make public mistakes. How often do you get that chance? Like the early days of radio or television, in the early days of radio, you know, Arch Obler or Orson Welles, who was, you know, 19 or 20 years old, would get up and say, hey, I know what we're going to do today, and that's what I feel about this. I know what to do today. Why don't we read the Declaration of Independence? Right? They get up there in front of and pull it right into it, and they read the Declaration of Independence, you know? And everybody would say, hey, that's a great idea. Now about the Federalist Papers? We'll try that tomorrow, you know? And people would listen. Why? Because it was brand new. And when we were doing it, we were so close to the idea that they you know, like the very first animated cartoons were really taken from Mutt and Jeff and things like that in the early 1920s to animate these, and people would die. Just to see Mutt and Jeff walk. They'd never seen a still drawing walk.
Yeah, could you try to do it for us?
Well, I can try to do well, from Farmer Alfalfa or something like that. I'll sign these later.
Okay.
But you'd have some crummy little mouse running, and of course I'm sorry I can't draw Felix, because Felix was pure animation.
Sure.
But you usually had a little mouse with a nose sticking out like this, and like so, and maybe big ears, of course, a forerunner of possible Mickey Mouse. And all he would do is run, these little feet usually just like this.
Now, this was the first thing that you did.
No, not the first thing I did, but the first thing that was done in animation.
Yeah, okay, they were doing it.
So they'd run along like this, and they'd jump up in the air, and then they'd run along, and they'd jump up in the air, and people said, oh my God, the character's moving, you know?
Isn't that exciting?
And then when talking pictures came along, you'd do anything with talking, as long as it was talking. The only person who didn't believe in it was Jack Warner. Harry Warner. He said, who the hell wants to hear an actor talk? Really, he said that. And,
so he didn't believe in talkies.
No, I told you.
Oh, that's really you know.
Oh, they were strange
really
people.
farsighted.
I mean, you know, like Wilson Meisner said, nobody could ever go bankrupt underestimating the good tastes of the Hollywood producers. But yeah, I told you the first time I met Harry Warner, and after I'd been directing for 15 years, this was 1945 or something. I started directing in 37. And he said, and I had never met him before. Yeah, Warner's.
Okay, now Warner of Warner Brothers, right?
This is the two Warner Brothers were there, Jack and Harry.
All right.
And Harry said, the only thing I know about our cartoon studio is that we make Mickey Mouse. And I said,
I mean, you go.
So I said, hey, great, you know.
I'm going to give up. I mean.
So I told him, I said, as we were leaving, I said, we'll try to make some good Mickey Mouse. He said, that's the boy. He says, keep working. And Friz Freleng said that they really believe that. Because he said that in 1962, they discovered we didn't make Mickey Mouse, so they shut the studio.
Oh, God.
Anyway, that's the kind of character that we, that was done in the early days, and people were satisfied with that. And then when we started animating, of course.
Yeah, now, Now, I had heard that that for a while, at least in some of the Disney studios, and I don't know if it's true for Warner Brothers, that certain animators were specialized. I mean, certain guys were good birdmen, and certain guys were good deer men and stuff. Was that true for Warner Brothers?
The greatest animators were not, and that was one of the reasons that most animators like actors. That they should be like actors. In the early days, there were duck men, as they called them, and Mickey men and stuff like that. But basically, a good animator like Frank Thomas or the great Ken Harris, who worked for me, or Benny Washam, whom we lost about a month ago, people of this kind were like great actors. You know, who knows what the personality is of Sir Alec Guinness or Laurence Olivier? We don't know.
Sure.
We know what Cary Grant is probably like off screen, and we know what Cooper was and the rest of these.
Yeah.
But we don't know what these people are when they're in their personal lives. Who knows? Even Diane Keaton, somebody like that. We hope she's as lovable as she'd fall in love with us, but she probably isn't. And that's what an animator is. You see, we don't know he doesn't have any particular personality as far as the thing he's working with.
Sure.
And so he can move into it. What he does really is to get down and come up inside the character. You become the frog, or you become Bugs Bunny, or you become the character. And then there are no lines involved any more than your characters. You know, the only way I think a child can quite understand how a character is drawn is to ask them make a quick drawing. They can copy it of the United States. Okay, they draw a line down this and one down here and show Florida. You're not asking them to do anything academic. What you're saying is, what are those lines for? They're to show the outside of the United States.
You know, what is a director? I mean, how does a director?
Yeah, it does sound a little strange. You can't very well order these characters to move around, can you? So at Warner Brothers, the way we drew, the way an animator worked, an animation director worked, was that he worked with the story man for 4 or 5 weeks on a story, and had to put in perhaps half the material. And sometimes the director, sometimes the story man would would come up with a premise, such as a French skunk in a perfume shop.
Right.
And then after that, I would take over as the director, and I'd do about 300 sketches out of the 6,000 that eventually would appear in the picture. But they had to do the key pictures, you know. I didn't try to do the animation, but, you know, the look of the things you're talking about, the looks and so on. Well, you know, like the coyote's falling through the air, he's afraid of humiliation. He's not really afraid of hitting. He doesn't want anybody to see him. He's aware there's an audience. The audience never thinks about this, but it's true. When he's looking like that, he folds his arms and looks, you know, and he doesn't want to be seen in this position. Most of us don't either. We don't like to be humiliated.
Yeah.
And so I would do those 300 drawings, and then we timed the entire picture on graph sheets.
Yeah.
A graph sheet would be a thing with lines like this and so on, and each one of those indicates 1/24th of a second.
Jeez.
So you'd go through enough of those to cover 6 minutes, which is 540 feet of, and each foot is 16 individual drawings.
Jeez.
So there are a lot of drawings.
Sure.
And but I would then lay out the thing. I'd show where if the character's walking, I'd put ST, which meant step. And another one down here, we'd show the dialogue, which would be like "What's up, Doc?" You put the WH here. That was all pre-recorded. And the ah would come here, perhaps a third of a second later. Then the TS sound, which is a sort of a diphthong, and then so on. And I'd have timed the entire picture that way. And then I'd follow up and handing out the scenes to the animator.
Yeah.
A good animator could do maybe at the most, say 20 seconds a week of film.
Oh my Lord, that must be really kind of, I mean, depressing when you're working on something and you see 1 week and you see less than a minute. You say, my gosh, what am I doing here?
Well, yeah, it is. It's different than what you do, but you must understand that when you do a drawing, you're allowed a day to do that drawing.
Sure.
I had to do 10 or 15, and an animator would have to do maybe 50.
Right, yeah.
And so, but you move into a different time-space thing. We timed our pictures entirely before they ever went to work.
Yeah.
A man like Spielberg or George Lucas or Martin Scorsese, these people will shoot thousands of feet over and above what they need. And then they spend a year editing it. See, I edited before it went to work. They edit it after they've done the work.
I can't believe that this time is gone so fast. I got a ton of things to ask you about. Is there any way that you could maybe stay here for another show? Maybe we could do another one?
Well, I'm not going to leave now. I'd love to stay, sure.
Great, please, please. And then we'll do this again for the next show, because I got a ton of other questions.
Well, I'll try to do my calisthenics next time.
All right. Okay. Please join Chuck Jones and me for another visit to this crazy and wonderful world of cartooning. See you then.